we're going to start today with, this is the review for the test, by the way. If you hadn't catch this yet, the test is tomorrow. This is if you haven't got anything new to learn, this is only review today. Test is tomorrow. So how would you start this? Well, if you were the maker, you get to pick, but I'm going to tell you, please use u sub 1. When would you ever use u sub 0? If it was a real world problem about like we have 25 goats and we're going to have them grow at this rate or whatever. But if you want a term like the 12th term, use u sub 1. That way u sub 12 is the 12th term. If you use u sub 0, u sub 12 will not be the 12th term. It'll be the 13th term. Because I'm going to ask you in a minute, like, what's the 12th term? So use u sub 1. So u sub 1 equals 2. You should always know that this comes next. The only reason I put parentheses around this is because on the calculator you'll have to. And then you can tell by just looking at this that it's add each time. What kind of sequence is it if you're adding each time? Arithmetic, good. What's the kind where you multiply? Geometric, good. That's a test question too. All right, so if you're adding 2, you just put plus 2. You don't put it in a parentheses, otherwise it'll times by 2. Do you know that if you put a parentheses around this in the calculator, it'll think, oh, you want me to multiply by 2. All right, so we don't have parentheses around that too. And then I just talked to our team. We decided unless the last person, there's one last person who hasn't chimed in on the email chain yet, but we're leaning towards not taking off all 10% if you just forgot n is equal or than equal to 2. Did you remember it though? Did anybody remember it right now? Okay, good. Then there's no chance you get marked wrong for it if you just put it there, okay? We'll just have to decide. We're trying to make it clear that all teachers are going to grade it the same way. I think we might just give you a break if you forget that. We'll see. Just don't forget it. There's no chance you lose points. All right, now do you know how to put it in the calculator? Go ahead, put this thing in. Just a quick reminder, cell phones can't even be on your desk. I know you're not using it, but cell phones have to be off your desk, and headphones need to be out of your ears. If you're wearing a hoodie, which if you're wearing a hoodie or some reason I can't see your ears, I have the right to ask to see your ears so that you aren't just listening to something and I can't see. All right? Or a hat pulled down over your ears, you know? I just want everybody's attention. That's all I'm asking. I will finish up here, and then you'll have your phones back again in a minute. All right. In case you forgot, the first thing that you see on the calculator is, well, for the kids that just log in and get the calculator off their iPad, you're not going to be able to do that on the test. Do you get that? We're not going to let you use an iPad during the test. Okay, so you better be working on getting a calculator. Hopefully you have a friend in a different hour who's going to let you borrow one. I do not have enough to promise you that I will have a calculator for you. You'll just have to wait till the test is over and borrow one from a friend. But there's a lot of problems with a calculator, so that would really suck. So bring a calculator. All right, so here's the first line on the calculator. You go to mode sequence. Okay, so you just logged in on the calculator and you haven't got sequence mode yet. Don't forget it's under the mode SEQ. And the first thing it asks you for is n min. That's this number. That's the first thing that goes in. The next thing it asks you is un colon or equals or something like that. I think, does it say equals or colon? I can't remember. On your calculator, does it say equals? Thank you. UN equals. And you have to use the lowercase u, which is above the 7, parentheses, because it can't do subscripts, n minus 1 plus 2. And the third line of the calculator says u parentheses n min. And if you understand what it's saying, you just defined n min as 1. And so that's saying u sub 1. It wants to know u sub 1, which is this number right here. And this, of course, came from right here. Other common mistakes people make on the calculator that's like, it's not working. Sometimes they use the negative key instead of the minus key for this. There's 2 keys, on the calculator. One's for negative and one's for minus. All right. And if you did all of that right, then there's two choices for getting the 12th term. You could either go to the table, but remember your table settings might be from the last problem we did where the table setting was like starting at 2025. So look for table set across the top row of your buttons and get your table set starting number to start at 1. And then go to table, which is above the farthest to the right key on the top. And if you hit table, you'll see what the 12th term is. Otherwise, you could have gone to U parentheses 12 on your calculator and it would have told you U sub 12. Either way, what is that number? Oh, wait, don't just say it out loud. I'm going to use the dice of destiny. I love that forming last word right here. I want to come up and get it. All right, it is row 6. There's nobody in row 6. Try again. Row 2, person 2, Liam, that's you. Can you tell me what U sub 12 was?
24.
Raise your hand if you had 24. Okay, awesome. Now, the problems, of course, can be just a word problem. Now, you've got everything all set up on your calculator, right? So I'm going to tell you a word problem. See if you can figure out what to change to what so that you can answer this question. I'm going to just write, I'm not going to put it in the right format. I'm just going to tell you a story. You start with 6 betta fish. Now, this is a type of fish that is fairly easy to raise at home, and they can breed in your tank. And all of a sudden, you've got more fish and more fish, okay? They say that you can make them grow by 80% each month. 80% growth. And then since I said each month, the problem is only going to be based on months. That means if I say I want to know what happens after 12 months, it's fine. It's just nothing to change in your formula. It's just your growth is 80% every month instead of every year. All right. Now, did you know that since it's a real world problem, you should have changed it to U sub 0? If you don't, it won't work. Okay. UN minus 1, growing by 80%, 1 plus 0.8, or 0.80 works fine. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. Now, here's my question. How many fish do you have? If you let them go, you have to feed them and all that stuff, take care of them, make sure there's enough water and make sure the water's clean and all that. But how many fish after 7 months? It's weird. Both times I rolled a 6 and there's no 6th row in this hour. And then when I re-rolled it, it rolled a 2 again. And this time, Liam, I called on you again. The odds of that are incredibly tiny, but I'm going to stick to probability. So what does it say for U sub, what did I ask you for? How many months? 7? What's U sub 7?
I got 367 fish.
I know, it seems insane, but that's an insane growth rate too. So raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, awesome. Okay, now I'm going to ask you another problem that I'm just going to tell you a story, and let's see if you get this right. Would you agree that when you buy a car, it typically doesn't increase in value because now it's going to be a used car? It goes down and down and down in value. Okay. So let's say that you buy one of Tesla's new cars that they're going to announce in the next few months. There's supposed to be a bigger vehicle like an SUV. I would love to see this. It's supposed to be some big Tesla. So let's say that you buy this thing and it is $58,000 for the They say that it'll seat 7. They're going to make a big vehicle that seats a lot of people. So you bought this vehicle, and it's going to decrease in value over time because that's what cars do. Because they're brand new, they're worth the most, and then they go down. Let's say that it goes down in value 5% per year. The last part of the story is this. When, in what year, like year 6 or whatever, in what year does the car finally become worth half what it used to be worth? In which year does the car become worth half its old value? Use a table. And there's nothing on the table that's going to say half of 58. You'll have to do that in your head or use the calculator separately to figure out what half of 58 is. All right, so if you didn't set it up right, obviously there's no way you'll get it right. Did you start with u sub 0? Good. Did you start with 58 for u sub 0? Okay, then did you say u sub n minus 1, 1 minus 0.05? That's what 5% decay looks like. You with me so far? Yes?
Isn't it, since you said it was later this year, isn't it okay to start with 2025?
Oh, okay. So that's a very good question. I was going to actually add that as an add-on to this question that I want everybody to change this too. So I like the idea that you knew we could have started with u sub 2025. The bad part about it is, then when you go to your table, it runs forever because, you got to change the table set to start at 2025. So it isn't always the best thing to make it, but for right now, I'm going to stick to u sub 0, but I'm glad you noted that could have been u sub 2025. All right, so in what year does the car become worth half? Well, half of 58 is 25, is it 7, 8, isn't that 29? Okay. Did you look on the chart and or the table and find when it finally hit 29,000? Now, it's not going to be exactly 29,000, but it has to go, probably the way the question should be worded is, in what year did it drop below 29,000? Okay. So you're looking for the first table number that goes to 29,000 or less. Lila, what did you get? 14. So do you get that that's because we started with u sub 0? That means 14 years later, the car is worth half what it used to be. Yes?
What should the table setup look like?
Okay, so why would you ever change the table setup? If you do what Brand had suggested, which is to use u sub 2025, then you'd put that into your calculator, right? And then your table's going to start at 2025. So you'll either have to arrow down a million times or you'll want to change your table set to be 2025, okay? So in this case, I did not say to do this. You didn't have to do that. But if you went out and did that, you'd need to change your table settings. All right, one more, and then I feel like you've got this. Actually, wait, a clarifying question on this one. I could totally see this being on the test, and you might have forgot the word. 0.05 is something, and 1 minus 0.05 is something else. Do you know the term for the 0.05 versus the term for the 1 minus 0.05? Big words. Got to know them for the test. If you don't know it now, better take notes in a second. Row 2, person 3, at least it branched out a little bit. Olivia, can you tell us what that 0.05 is? It's the rate. What kind of rate in this problem? Decay rate. That's called the decay rate. Well, what about the 1 minus the 0.05, which, by the way, is 0.95? Either would be accepted. 1 minus 0.05, which is 0.95, is called the common, can you say it? Dope. Common ratio. Let's talk about the difference. Common ratio. A common difference is the kind where you were adding something each time. This is not adding something each time, right? This one is multiplying by something each time, and that's a ratio. Common ratio versus decay rate. Okay. So I'm going to pause for a second, and I want you to think about, is there any of these types of questions that you feel like you're getting wrong too often, and like, could you explain this concept? So I want you to look through. In fact, we have to do this review worksheet in a second anyways. Why don't you open up the review worksheet, look at it, see if there's anything in there that you want to ask. I'm going to pause while you do that. Okay, I thought of a couple things that we haven't talked about very much that we should probably talk about. Does that graph right there represent growth or decay? Growth, that's pretty easy. But does it represent arithmetic or geometric growth? Arithmetic, good. Arithmetic is straight because you're just like adding 2 each time. Can you sketch what geometric growth would have looked like? This is arithmetic growth. We know that's what that looks like. What would geometric growth have looked like? We haven't talked about that very much, have we? What's the difference? It's curved. Okay, it's also known as exponential growth. All right. And of course, decay would just be going down. So like this would be straight line decay, which is what kind of decay? Arithmetic. Yep. And how about curved but decay? What kind of decay is that? Geometric decay. That green curved line. Here, I'll get rid of the other green dots. The green dots, that's representing geometric decay. Okay, here's another one. I know you'll be able to tell that it's growing. That's 14.12. And I'm going to tell you we did not just add 0.12. This is not arithmetic, which means, of course, that it is geometric. So then my question is, what's the common ratio? You've got a calculator. You'd be encouraged to use it. All right, you know how I've tried to make you learn the name of, and hopefully maybe you still remember it. If not, it doesn't matter. Just talk to person straight across from you. Rows 1 and 2, argue about it. Rows 3 and 4, talk. You guys, it's person in front behind, and okay. Talk to them, please, about what you think the common ratio is.
I got 1.014.
All right. It's good that this is a weird one. It's not just like 20%. Okay, so Rohan, what did you get when you divided 14.12 divided by 14?
1.008.
I know you didn't. Okay, wait. Okay. Now I heard you right. 1.008. Keep going a little further.
571.
7.1. Okay, good. Good enough on that. Now, you look at that, and first of all, you got to know, is that growth or decay? Growth. So this is the part that's above 1, right? Be careful. Is that 8% growth? No. What is it? 0.8. Or if you wanted to round it, 0.9% growth. Got to move over 2 spots. 0.8% growth. There's got to be a difference between 8% and 0.8%, right? If the 8 would have been here, that would have been 8%. But this is 0.8% growth. Okay. I can't think of anything else. I asked you guys to open the thing. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Does an arithmetic sequence have a common ratio?
Good question. There's common difference and common ratio. Let's talk about the two. 2 add 3 is 5, add 3 is 8, ... Of course, that kind is the arithmetic kind, right? So that kind has, you go this minus this, and you get 3, right? This minus this, also 3. What do you think that kind right there is called? A common something. Yes, that kind is called a common difference. Versus 2 multiplied by 3 is 6, multiplied by 3 is 18, ... When I divide 6 divided by 2, and I get 3, that has a 3 also, but that's called a common ratio because you divide them like that. So that's the difference between a common difference and a common ratio. Any other questions? Yes.
So if it's to like, if it's like it changes by this amount, then that's the rate. But if it's like
Wait. No. Nope. Can't just say if it changes by this amount, that's the rate. Like for this example, that changes by 3. Would you agree with that? But 3 is not the rate. Okay? 3 is the common difference. All right? So what if we're doing a common ratio? Well, then it's timesing by 3 each time, but it's still not the rate. That's called the ratio. Okay, so there's a difference between the rate and the ratio. So let's talk about that for this exact example. Do you get that it's times by 3? That is called the common ratio. So what would the growth rate be if you're timesing by 3? That's a tough question, and it's a good question. So then I always said you should change this, u sub n equals u sub n minus 1, to be a 1 plus or 1 minus something, right? And so since our number is 3, we could just put a big times 3 here, but the problem is it doesn't tell us very well what the growth rate is. Okay, so there's a 3 there. Would you agree with that? But my hint was change it to a 1 plus something. What would it be? 1 plus what? Don't overthink this. 1 plus 2 is 3. Now do you see the growth rate? How much is the growth rate? Careful, not 20%. 200%, exactly. Did you guys catch that? She caught on to something that's very likely to be on the test. So they give you a common ratio of 3. It's timesing by 3 each time here. Would you have known that that was 200% growth? All right. Let's do another one like that. Let's say I go from 12 to 24, ... But they haven't given me enough information because I could have added 12 or they could have times by 2, right? But if I say it's geometric, now you know which it was. And I'd like you to write the equation and then tell me, after you've written the equation, tell me what the common ratio is and what the rate is, and they are different. I can't think of a time when they're ever the same. Now, since I didn't give you any context, I probably would have started with u sub 1. It's legal to start with u sub 0. But if it's a word problem, no brainer. Start with u sub 0. Unless you want to start with a year, which is an option. U sub 1 equals 12. U sub n minus 1. And then, remember, I just gave you this advice. Put 1 plus something in here. But you're like, but I want to put 2. Well, then put 1 plus 1, because that'll be 2. So it's a really common mistake when people hear like, oh, my money doubled. I got 200%. No, you didn't. Your growth was not 200% if your money doubled. If your money doubled, your growth was 100%. Growth, the common ratio was a 2. Okay? All right. That was a good question. Are there any other things that you want to ask? Like for clarifying questions. Okay, so the way I want to do the review assignment is it's a lot to ask you to do every single problem on here by tomorrow. That's a lot of work. And so I'm going to say you pick any 3 problems that you want to remove from the practice test here. But do so at your own peril, knowing you might be skipping one that's just like that, the one on the test. So I would only skip ones. You get to skip any 3. I would only skip ones that you know how to do. Like, I got this kind, not worried about it. It'll just waste my time to do it. Okay, so only skip ones you are very confident in and do all the other problems except for those 3. Okay? So do all the problems except 3. And that's all I got for you for today. Oh, one more warning or reminder. Tomorrow is a Tuesday, and for many of you, this will be the first chance you would ever want to come in for extra help. Because you know there's a test coming. If you've been lost lately, you might want to know that my help days are on Tuesdays and Thursdays in this room at 7:05, same exact room you're in right now. Okay, so if you ever want to get extra help, Tuesdays and Thursdays are your days in the morning. So tomorrow would work. If you want to, I can even give you some practice problems you could try. All right, now it's really all I got for today.